Hey folks, here we go. Uh, this is your first night watching a flip lesson, and settle in, get comfy, get your learning cap on, and let's solve some polynomials. All right, here we go. So today's lesson is how we can use our calculator to help us solve polynomials. So in this first example, you'll notice that our polynomial is a third degree polynomial. Okay? And when we're solving these, if you remember from yesterday, most of the time the goal is to get that third degree, or whatever degree it is, to get it down to a quadratic. Okay? Now sometimes we can pull out a greatest common factor and do that. Unfortunately, that's not going to work here. So we're going to use our calculator to help us. So we know that this has three solutions, I'm sorry, because it's a cubic. Okay? If we can get our calculator to get us one solution, then that's great, because then we can use synthetic division to divide it down into a quadratic, and that's going to kind of be our process. We're going to get a solution, okay, with our calculator. We're going to use synthetic division, and that's going to give us a quadratic, which we can use the quadratic formula to solve. So we're going to do a lot of mathematics here, which is pretty awesome. Solving polynomials on our calculator, synthetic division, and a quadratic formula. So let's take a look at what this all looks like for you. Okay, so I'm going to pull up and I'm going to put this function into. Now my graphing calculator isn't working, TI-81, but we can use Desmos. So 3x cubed minus 4x. Let me see, I can't remember what it was. 4x squared minus 17x plus 6. Okay. So remember, my goal is to get at least one of the nice solutions. Okay, so I can see here there's -2 as a solution. This one's not so nice. There's another nice solution. Okay, so I could use either one of those nice solutions. Okay, so I'm going to use this 3 solution. Okay, could pick either one, the 3 or the 2. Okay, and let's take a look what we do next. So once you graph it and use your calculator to find the solution, you're going to come back, and what that tells you is if I know from my graph that x equals 3 is a solution, as a result, that tells me that one of my factors of this polynomial is x minus 3. Okay? So I know that this cubic up here, this function will factor into x minus 3 and something else. And something else. Okay? Now, I have to figure out what this other part of this polynomial is, and I'm going to use synthetic division to do that. So I'm going to take this x minus 3, and I take the opposite of the factor, 3, and now I pull down my coefficients, 3, -4, -17, and 6. And I do synthetic division. I add, multiply, 3 times 3 is 9, add 15, add these together, -2, multiply, and of course I should get 0. Okay, so this tells me that when I divide by x minus 3, because I used my calculator and I got x equals 3 as one solution, that told me that x minus 3 is a factor. I use synthetic division, and now I know that my polynomial factors into x minus 3, 3x squared plus 5x minus 2, and that equals 0. Okay? I have one answer already, x equals 3. Now I'm going to use the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'm going to use that to get my other answer. So, opposite of 5 plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 3 times negative 2. Okay. Whoop, better put that in parentheses. All over 2a. All over 6. So, negative 5 plus or minus square root of 25 plus 12, plus 24, right? 4 times 3 and negative 2 is negative 24, but I'm adding, so 49 all over 6. Negative 5 plus or minus 7 over 6. So I'm going to get two answers. Negative 5 plus 7, I'm going to get 2/6. Negative 5 minus 7, negative 12 over 6. So my three answers are 3, 1/3, and negative 2. Three solutions, cubic, three solutions. And I was able to use my calculator to get the first answer. Then I know that's a factor. I use synthetic division to break the cubic down into a quadratic. Use the quadratic formula to get my two other answers. Okay? Great math problem. Lots of math, lots of topics, tying a lot of big ideas together. That's what I call outstanding math. Just like an outstanding team. Okay? Just threw that in there for you. All right. Next problem. Let's try this again. So again, I have a cubic. There's got to be three solutions. Three solutions. Okay. To find at least one nice solution, I'm going to go to my calculator again. Okay. So we're going to come up here. We're going to go back to Desmos. I'm going to clear out this function. Okay. And I'm going to type in x cubed minus x squared. Whoop, sorry about that. X cubed minus x squared plus 10x minus 24. Okay. Now, hard to see, but we got to zoom out. It's a cubic. I can see that it does cross the x-axis somewhere. Okay, at 2. Okay, crosses at 2. So I know that's one nice solution. Okay. So from my calculator, I know that I have one nice solution, x equals 2. So that factors, as a factor, it's x minus 2. So I know that I'm going to have x minus 2 times a trinomial, and I have to figure out this trinomial using synthetic division. Okay, so I take, since this is minus 2, I take a positive 2, I bring down my coefficients, 1, negative 1, 10, negative 24. I add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, and I get a remainder of 0. Okay? Again, the goal was to figure out what quadratic goes in there. Well, here I have it. I now know it's x minus 2 times x squared plus x plus 12. That all equals 0. Okay? So one of my solutions I already know is x equals 2. After I do the synthetic division, I'm now going to use the quadratic formula to solve this quadratic. All right, here we go. opposite of b, which is 1, plus or minus square root of b squared, 1 squared, minus 4ac all over, whoops, not 2a, all over 2 times a. So that's going to give me 2. So, all right, now we do a little math here. We got negative 1 plus or minus square root of 1 minus 48 is negative 47 all over 2. Okay. Well, we can't take the square root of a negative number as is, but we can, if we need to, change this to an imaginary root by taking out an I and making it the square root of positive 47 over 2. Okay. Now I cannot break down 47 anymore. That square root of 47 is simplified. Okay. You may have to break that radical down if necessary. But I have 3 solutions now. I have negative 1 plus I square roots of 47 over 2. And I have negative 1 minus I square root of 47 over 2. So there's 3 solutions from a cubic function using my calculator to get one solution, then synthetic division to get the next solution, or to turn it into a quadratic formula to get 2 more answers. All right, so we are going to have one more example here today for you. Okay, moving on. So now, as we look at this problem, it's only 2 terms. It's a cubic, which means there's going to be 3 solutions to this. And my goal is always to find one easy solution, right? I guess you'd call it easy in quotes. And sometimes you can do that with your calculator. But other times you may be able to use a factoring formula. Okay? So don't automatically jump right to the calculator. If you look at this function more closely, and I'm going to reorder it for you, it's 2 terms, and it's 1 cube minus a different cube. It's a difference of cubes. Okay? So there is a formula for that for factoring. It is a binomial times a trinomial. It is a minus b, the cube roots of these 2 values. The cube root of 1 is 1. The cube root of 27x cubed is 3x. Then it's a squared plus 3x times 1 plus b squared. So notice, now I have a linear term and a quadratic. The linear term can be set equal to 0 to get 1/3. 1/3. The quadratic term, I can use the quadratic formula. The opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4. Now be careful. The a is not 1, the a is 9. 4ac all over 2a, all over 18. Okay, again, that a is 9. You got to think of it as ax squared. That's why that's your a term. Right? So the opposite of b, plus or minus, let's see what we get inside the square root here. 9 minus 36 is negative 27 over 18. Okay? Remember, you have to keep on simplifying. So I'm going to pull out an I, make that positive 27. Okay? Very important here, this will simplify. Okay? That will simplify. Let me highlight that for you. We have to simplify that. Okay. So I can simplify that to -3 plus or minus. This becomes the square root of 9 and the square root of 3. So I can pull out a 3 with the I. And now, whoop, I believe on the bottom this should be the square root of 18. That's my bad, right? Square root of 18. So some people will stop here, but other people know that we have to simplify all the way, and I can divide all of these terms by 3. Okay? Which means I get -1 plus or minus I square root of 3 over 6. That's 2 answers. I already have my 1/3, so I get 3 solutions. Okay, and it was a cubic. All right, so to recap, right, we're using our calculator to help us solve polynomials. So sometimes we may have to use our calculator to get our first solution, right? To get our first solution like a 2, okay? And once we get our first solution for a cubic, we can use synthetic division to break that into a linear term and a quadratic. And then we can use the quadratic formula, okay, to get the other 2 answers. Otherwise, be careful because you might have to use a formula to factor. Okay? So one thing to remember in terms of formulas, you got a difference of squares, difference of cubes, or a sum of cubes. Right? And let me just recap these formulas for you. Start over. Bad. Sorry about that. I was doing the cubed first. A plus b, a minus b, a minus b, a squared plus ab plus b squared. And the sum is addition and then subtraction here. Okay? So you may have to use one of these 3 right away. Keep that in mind. Finally, to finish up, you may run across something that's to the 5th power. Okay? If that happens, remember the goal is to get it broken down into a quadratic. Okay? So on this case, you might have to use your calculator and you might need to use your calculator and actually find 3 solutions. Okay? And you might have to do synthetic division multiple times. Okay? And we'll start class probably by looking at one of these. So, that's your lesson for the evening. We'll see you ready to go tomorrow in class.